And those two Greek words, born is geneo, meaning from the womb. And again, is anothen is a Greek word. And that means from the beginning or from above. Think about that, from the beginning and from above. Be born again. And what he's saying is, he says, your spirit, the spirit of man was decimated. It died, just like he said, when Adam rebelled. He said, the day you eat of it, you will surely die. The part of you that's like me will die. Because Adam and Eve was in his image and likeness. And that part of Yahweh that was like Yahweh died. Their spirits died. And so Yeshua, when he came, he said, you must be born again. Your spirit needs to be back in the image and likeness of the Most High. And so that's what we're talking about, being born again. When he says it in John 3:16, you must, or not 3:16, but he said it earlier when he was talking to Nicodemus in John chapter 3. And he says, you must be born again. He wanted to know, how can you be born again? He's like, it's not through your flesh. It's your spirit needs to be born again. And your spirit, this whole realm we live in is word dominated. Mm-hmm. And it says, and Yeshua said, the words that I speak to you are spirit and life. He says it in John chapter 6. So your spirit is closely associated with the word. And it says, in the beginning was the word was God, the word was with God. And it says that the Messiah was the word. So you're like, why is he going around that? Because your spirit and your words need to be aligned with the spirit and the words of the Most High. You need to get your words right. And that's how we get into a covenant. Think about it. That's how a man and a woman get into a marriage covenant, through their words. And their spirits, if they're aligned correctly with that, then that marriage is blessed and they become one. They're no longer the same. Same for you. Your words and your spirit align with the covenant that the Most High put out there for you. When they align with Him, you'll never be the same. As a matter of fact, in Galatians 2, it says, you're a new creation. You'll be a new creation because you will be something that never lived before. Your spirit will be alive. And you'll be alive unto God, with Him. And you'll be the righteousness of the Most High. So the way to do this, say your words. I accept you. I accept your Son, that free gift. And I make you my Father, my God, my King. And you need to mean it, because He meant it. That's why He said it. He sent His word. He said it by sending His word. He said it by sending His word. He said it by sending His word. Hallelujah. Glory to God. So we've been talking about Revelation today. We're not even going to go into a rabbit hole. We're going into a detour. We're not going to a rabbit hole. We're going into a detour. So just buckle up, Buttercup. In Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, this is one of our jumping off scriptures. It says, and we're going to read Isaiah 46, verse 9 and 10 as well. But Revelation chapter 1, it says, verse 1 through 3, it says, the revelation of Yeshua HaMashiach, which Yahweh gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John, who bore record of the word of Yahweh, and of the testimony of Yeshua HaMashiach, and of all things that he saw. So he's bearing record of the things that he saw and he heard from the Messiah, that was sent to the Messiah through his father sent the Messiah. He says, God, in verse 1, it says, Yahweh gave unto him to show unto his servants, right? Anyway, verse 3, it says, and then this word blessed, and so religion has told us that the book of Revelation is spooky. But the word tells us that it's blessed. It's not spooky. It's not something to be afraid of. Perfect love casts out fear. Verse 3, it says, blessed is he that reads it, and they that hear the words of this prophecy. And two key words is, and those that keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. So hearing and keeping. If you're blessed, if you hear it and you keep it. And that's what it says. That's why we're going through the study of Revelation, the book of Revelation. Now, I personally, and we're going to turn to Isaiah 46, but I personally believe we're in the end times because of things that I've read in the Bible. Now, you're like, well, why would you do that? Because I believe the Bible's true. You know, why do you believe it's true? Because I've seen too much. You know, you know how sometimes you just can't, like, there's an experience you had, you can tell somebody about it, but until they experience it, they don't know it.
Right.
That's right.
You know, so all I can tell you is I've experienced it. You can't convince me that Yahweh doesn't exist. You can't convince me that Yeshua doesn't exist. You can't convince me that the word doesn't work, because I've seen too much. Too many times in my life where Yahweh moved on my behalf when I called on the name. So you can't convince me. Now that's okay. You don't need to be convinced. See, just because something is true and you don't believe it doesn't make it untrue.
Right.
I know. See, I'm not trying to know and understand. I know. See, you may say, well, I don't know, I don't believe. That's okay. I'm just telling you, I know. See, I'm willing to die on this hill, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I know. That's why the disciples were willing to die, because they knew. You know, somebody tell you, I'm going to martyr you, I'm going to kill you unless you denounce him. No, and they're like, no, because we know.
Right.
Anyway, Isaiah 46, verse 9 and 10. And this is this is the hallmark of the Most High. He says his word, and his word always comes true. And here's the other thing. Because he's who he is, he knows all things. He's outside of time. See, the problem is with our finite mind, we don't realize that things are space, time, and matter, right? So none of those can exist independently. So, which means Yahweh, who has to be outside of it in order to create them.
Right.
Amen.
Verse 9. See, that's why, when we say in the beginning, that's just our beginning. That's not his beginning. He is.
Yeah.
Because he has no end and no beginning.
Amen.
He is. And so when we read in Genesis 1, when we say the beginning, it's our beginning, not his.
Right.
This is the beginning of this realm that he created for us. His realm is heaven. This realm is what he gave to us. And so this realm was created when we read in Genesis 1, in the beginning, the earth was without form and void. You think heaven was without form and void? No, because that's his realm.
Right.
And if you read in Job and some other scriptures, you'll see it says that the divine council, or the sons of Yahweh, were there with him, seeing as he was creating things. So where were they? They were outside of time as well.
Right.
Because Because they were B'nai Elohim. They were the sons of the Most High.
Yes.
So they were outside. I'm just trying to frame some things so that we have context. See, when you have context, it makes it bigger and more depth of understanding when you have context.
Right.
So I'm gonna throw out some observations at some point, because it helps. It's like, say we're looking at a map, but the map is rolled up. So you gotta put a stone here and a stone here, a stone here to kind of put it in place so you can have context. Because if you only look at what you can see and what's unrolled as it's unrolling, you don't have the proper context. But when we can unroll the whole things and put some stones down to kind of lay it out so you can see the whole picture.
Right.
That's why we're going this way. But verse 9, it says, this is Yahweh speaking. He says, he's speaking in Isaiah's writing. He says, remember the former things of old, for I am Yahweh, and there is none else. I am Yahweh. You know, he's repeating. He's letting you know there's nothing to play with. There is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning. So again, like I said, to be able to declare the end from the beginning, you need to be able to see that. You need to be able to be there. See, Yahweh's not moving along this parallel line with us, like saying, okay, now I'm in 2026. Yahweh is in everywhere. He's not just in 2026. He's in 2025. He's in 2027. He's outside of time.
That's right.
He's not like moving along with, oh, here we are. Oh, no. That's why he says, I can declare the end from the beginning.
That's right.
And from ancient times, the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Those two scriptures in Revelation 1 and Isaiah 46. I like to start out each time with this, because they set the stage for me. I want to put this out there. We're gonna go somewhere today. Like I said, we're gonna be in a detour. But I want to start out by saying this, so that you don't get me wrong, don't get this twisted. when we get into paradise, there's going to be people in paradise that did not say Yeshua. They didn't say Yahushua. They said Jesus. There'll be people in paradise that only knew him by the name Jesus. They may not have known that he had a Hebrew name, that his name was Yeshua or Yahushua. They may not have known that there's going to be people in paradise that thought he was white because they trusted him. There'll be people in paradise that thought he was olive skinned, whatever that could be. Because olives I see is green and black. But there's going to be people in paradise that thought he was olive because they definitely didn't want him to be black. There'll be people in paradise that they went there in their ignorance of what he actually looked like because they were religious and they didn't read the Bible or let the Bible tell them what it said, right? So they'll say, well, he's got to be white because white people have been in charge for a long time in this world. Or, well, he can't be black because we don't want him to be black, but we'll concede and let him be olive colored. But there will be people in paradise that have those beliefs because they trusted in the Messiah. Look, see, you don't get into paradise because you're perfect. You don't get in paradise because your theology is perfect. You get in paradise because the one we trust is perfect. I don't know if y'all understand that, but you don't get in paradise because of how perfect your belief is. You get in paradise because the perfect one you trusted in. See, that takes a load off. Hallelujah. But so I've just been thinking about that because people don't want to trust that he's the color that the Bible says he is. Like we read when we were in Revelation 1, when it says that when John turned around and saw him, he said his hair was white like wool, his eyes were flaming fire, whatever it was, and his feet were because he had on his long robe, so they only could see basically of his body was his feet. And it says they were like brass that had been burnt in fire, right? So we understand that because we read the Bible and we allow the Bible to tell us what it says instead of going by what people have told us what it said, okay? All right, that's where we are. So we're framing this to say we are believers. See, believers believe something. Right. And the something that we believe is what the Word says. Not what man says, not what religion says, not even what pictures show us. Like I said before, there's pictures, you have the church fans and then all these things that go against what the second commandment says, which is do not make any graven image of things in heaven, things on earth, things under the earth, things in the sea. But yet people have done that and yet we believed it. But no more, not here, not in El Shaddai Christian Assembly. We believe what the Word says, and the Word says he's not white. It says his feet were like burnt brass, burned as if burned in the fire. And if that wasn't enough, he goes into Revelation chapter 2, and he says it again in verse about 14 or 18. Okay, verse 18. Listen to this. See, when he says something over and over again, he said, I need you to understand this and believe this. Verse 18, he says, and unto the angel of the church in Thyatira, right, these things saith the Son of Yah, who have his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are white. See, he's telling you again, he said, you may have forgot since chapter 1, but now you're here in chapter 2. I want to remind you who's talking to the churches. Now we're going to go up a little further. Now, here's one thing I want to say too, is that the church age, or these churches that Yeshua is talking about, like there's 7 of them, and what scholars believe is that these 7 churches represent 7 different ages in the church in that order as it's shown. The first church, that's kind of like, that's what they believe, that this is an age, like there's 7 ages of the church, and we would probably be in the 7th age. That's kind of what scholars have posited. Now, they may not say that we're in the 7th age now, but that's what I'm putting that part out, because I believe we're in the end time, okay? Now, I want to say this too, and then we're going to read I want to read in Luke 21. But, no, I'm actually going to read somewhere else first, I think. We'll see. Anyway, so I want to say this. Last time, I think I was sharing with you about the Nicolaitans, and I said one of the things with the Nicolaitans is it was basically the satanic commandment, which is do what thou wilt. That was the problem with the Nicolaitans, right? Now think about this. This is ironic because the demonic or Satan, Hasatan, Satan means the adversary. The adversary, his whole thing is to get his churches do whatever you want, right? But then as soon as he gets in charge, he has one world government. You can't do what you want. Like, in other words, you can't buy or sell once he's in charge. Isn't that ironic? He said, this is my commandment. Do what you want. And he said, oh, I'm in charge? You can't do nothing until I tell you you can. That's ironic. That's just an observation I had. Here's another one. Is that I shared this last time, which is that he wants to. Actually, before I say that, I want to tell you. There's an adage you hear people talk about. Like I said, don't talk, or don't, because they get into argument. Don't talk about money, politics, or religion. You ever heard that? Don't talk about money, politics, or religion. Think about this. He wants to have a one world government, politics, one world currency, money, one world religion. And he says, don't talk about it. Why do you think that's so? Just an observation. Like in our culture, like, oh, you don't want to talk about religion, don't talk about politics, don't talk about money, because you'll get into argument. And that's the same thing that he wants to have. Isn't that ironic? He wants to be in charge of all those things. I would think that's ironic. I would think that's hypocritic. Right? Hypocrisy, hypocritic. You watch those critics, those hypocrites. Anyway, but that's hypocrisy. See, that's why we need to know the truth. We need to know what the word says. We need to know. So when they're telling you don't do this, we need to know what Yahweh said to do. That's right. Hallelujah. So those are a couple of observations. Let's turn to Luke chapter 21. And one of the things I said, I think one or two times ago, when I ministered, was that those three things that the enemy wants to be in, like religion, government, and money, that he's not waiting till the end time to get into it. I think y'all recall that I said, he's not going to wait till the end and say, oh, let me dive into religion. Let me dive into money. Let me dive into politics or government. He's not going to wait till he's been in it from the beginning. Just like he was in the garden from the beginning. He didn't wait till now to start. He said, you know what party should I be in? Which currency should I be in? You know what I'm saying? No, and what religion should I be in? All of them. Every party. Every currency. He's been in all of them from the beginning. And the fact, and if you start to recognize that, when you get that as a base of your understanding, you understand way more when things are coming at you. When people are saying things, you understand, I don't need to be in fear. See, that's the devil's reign. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, and whatever in high places, something like that. If you want to find out for sure, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 on. But you know what I'm saying? But when I'm saying that is, there's people that are in those things that, that are there's just like Yahweh has his spirit in us, the enemy has his spirit in these people. Yes. No, there's people who they are serving him because they think he's their God. That's why they say, do what thou wilt. There's people who think they can get power, spiritual power, by serving him more than they would get by serving the Most High. Because they don't believe that the Most High will win. No, there's people like that out there like that. Satan, if you go back to Genesis 3, it says, the seed of the woman will step on the head of your head. They'll bruise your seed, I'm sorry. We should read that. It's in Genesis 3:15. I'm not turning to it, but it says, so the woman has seed. We are the seed of the woman. But there's people that are the seed of the serpent. You could call them serpent seed if you want. There's a seed war going on. No, when you recognize that, understand that, everybody isn't, no matter what you say, everybody isn't going to serve the Most High. Some people already have a God that they're happy with for now. Luke 21, anyway. Like I said, we're going on a long detour, so we may get back to chapter 2 in about 3 weeks. But anyway, so, I know, right? So here's one thing I was saying to Sister D earlier. I said, we're in the book of Revelation. But by the time I get done, when we get done this, because it's 22 chapters, we will be in the book of Revelation. Because I think we're in the book of Revelation now, as far as our society. Wars, rumors of wars, and things like that going on. Anyway. 21, verse 1. It says, actually I'm going to read from verse 5. And as some spoke of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts, he said, as for these things which you behold, the days will come in which there shall be not left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what time will there be when these things shall come to pass? And he said, take heed that you be not deceived. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. And the time draweth near, go ye not therefore after them. But when you shall hear of wars and commotions, and be not terrified. For these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. And the end is not by and by. So, and I want to turn to verse 24 in here as well. This is kind of going to be a key verse for us of Luke chapter 21. And I'm reading in the King James. And it says, and he's still talking about all this stuff that's going on, right? Actually, I'm going to go verse 20. Let me get to verse 20. It says the destruction of Jerusalem. Verse 20. It says, and when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is near. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. Verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and listen, and you've heard this again before, and they shall be led away captive into all nations. I want to put just a marker there. Is there any group of people that was led captive into all nations? You know, and white people, a lot of white people, whenever you say, oh, you know, everybody was slaves. Were you led captive in all nations? You know, like, oh, everybody was slaves. No, they were. Okay, give me instances of when they were slaves. When was Rome in slavery? When was Greece in slavery? You know, but they just throw things out there, and because they want to be argumentative. You know, like, I want to, no, I'm one-upping you. Well, everybody was slaves. It says they will be led captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So there's a time of the Gentiles. And Yahweh's people were led captive into every nation. So tell me when, you know, again, don't hand me that stuff about everybody was slaves. When were the Eskimos slaves? You know what I'm saying? Like, don't hand me that stuff. Like I said, I've seen too much. And I study and I read. I never saw the Eskimos go into slavery. Never saw Rome go into slavery. Everybody was slaves. Well, who was in charge then? It's just like black people say, well, we're all kings and queens. Well, who are you king and queen over? You know what I'm saying? Like, don't hand me this stupid stuff. I'll go on both sides. Look, I'm an equal opportunity. Anyway, it says, they will be led captive in all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down to the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And he said, why is he reading this? Turn to Psalm 83. And I think we're going to start to zero in a little bit. And you've heard me minister on a couple of these things before. And but do a little different today. Psalm 83. The caption is Yahweh, don't keep silent. But this is talking about, listen, well, we'll read it. We're going to find out. It says, keep not thou silent, O Yah. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O Yah. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. Listen to this. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. Who's his people? Do you know who his people are? Who his people be? In this point, this is in the Old Testament, it's in Psalm, it's talking about the chosen people, Israel. He said, people have taken crafty counsel against them. And he said, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. So there's a group of people that have taken counsel against Yahweh's people so that they would have no name anymore. They're like, well, why are we in this? Because, well, we'll get to that. Verse 5. It says, so they would no more be in remembrance. Verse 5, it says, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. So there's a group. There's not just one group of people. There's a group of nations that are confederate. They're in a confederacy against the Most High. See, it's not, like I said, this is a seed war. It's not just against the children of Israel. It's against Yahweh. Verse 6, and this is key right here. Verse 6, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes. Edom is where we're going to be focusing a little bit today. But we're going to continue on a couple more verses. Verse 7, it says, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Ashur also is joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot, Selah, and do unto them as unto the Midianites. And they're asking him to, he's asked, this prayer is to do unto these people like you did, Father, unto the Midianites. Because there have been people who have taken crafty counsel against them. Listen to verse 12. It says, who said, let us take to ourselves the houses of Yah in possession. Oh my God, make them like a wheel and as stubble before the wind. There's more, but I want to continue. I want to jump back here a little bit. Why am I reading that? Because history has not been clear on us, to us. You know, why? Because they conflate, there's terms that's been conflated, so you're getting the wrong thing. Like, for example, I just read about Edom. Well, who is Edom? Edom came from Esau. So when you read in the Bible when it says Edom and Esau, it's the same line. It's the lineage, right? And then if you hear this, if you hear Idumea, that's what the Romans named Edom and Edom. Romans called it Idumea. So there's a conflation. You're thinking, well, there's these three things. Well, they're different. No, they're all the same. Edom, Esau, and Idumea. It's all the same lineage. All right? We're going somewhere with this. I'm going to turn back to Revelation 2. Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. Revelation 2. So this was the second church in verse 8. When he's talking, this is Yahushua is talking. In verse 8 it says, and unto the angel of the church in Smyrna write, these things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. And listen to this, verse 9. He says, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty. And then it's in parentheses. So he says, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. So he's saying that somewhere along the line, there's going to be people who are saying they're Jews but are not. But they're synagogue of Satan. Turn to one chapter over, chapter 3, verse 9. Well, verse 8, I'm going to read verse 8. He says, and he's talking to the church in Philadelphia. He says, I know thy works. Behold, I've set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I've loved thee. So, He's saying at the end times there's going to be people who are saying they're Jews or not, and they lie. They're a synagogue of Satan. I shared with you before something that it says in the Talmud. And look, you know my heart. You know I'm not against anybody, but what I do know is that Yahweh's word is true. And that's what this word says. That there's going to be people who are saying there's something that they're not because they lie. He also said that in the last days there's going to be deception. Is that correct? Yeah. He says there's going to be deception. He says there's going to be people that lie, saying who they are, but they're not. Now, I happen to know some things that you don't know yet, and we're going to get to it. But for example, King Herod. Let me just read something about him, and this, because it's germane to what we're reading. I want to read a little thing about him, and then we're going to go a little further. Herod the Great. Remind me that I want to talk about when the Jews went into Babylon. Remind me after this. That's what I'm going to go to next. So it's on my other phone. Herod the Great. Herod's grandfather had been governor of Edom. You know who Edom is, right? Esau, right? Okay. And he says he had been governor of Edom, which lay just south of Judea. Okay, that's interesting. In 47 BC, Julius Caesar made Antipater, Antipator, however you pronounce it, Antipater or Pater, whatever. Anyway, he made him, who was Herod's father, the governor of Judea. And after Antipater, he did this because that guy, rescued him from a siege in Alexandria, Egypt. And he died in 43 BC, that guy. In 40 BC, the Parthians, which are today's Iranians, attacked the Roman Empire's eastern fringe and briefly occupied Judea. Herod, who was Anti's son, escaped to Rome, where the Roman Senate named him king of the Jews and gave him a Roman army and told him to retake Judea, which he did in 37 BC. So that's 37 years or so before Christ was born. He's the same Herod that was the one that was killing all the babies to prevent. Okay, so now he was king of the Jews, but he was really from Edom, Esau. No, it's known he was an Edomite. So here's what happened. In 125 BC, one of the last, after the Maccabean War, I forget his name, Hyrcanus, one of the Hammodus, or whatever. They conquered Edom, and they forced them, in Idumea, they forced them to become circumcised and to be Jews. They forced them, but they weren't Jews. They forced them to be. And so now they're getting their one-uppings. Later on, now Herod's king. And so now these Idumeans, or these Esau or Edomites are interspersed. Now I'm not saying everyone was evil. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying every Jewish or Israelite person was on the on the 100 either, because that's why they did have a lot of mingling and intermingling, and so there was a lot of things going on. And that's what. So think about this. So when the Messiah showed up, the realm of Judea is reigned by Esau or Edomites. As a matter of fact, in the book of Josephus, what Josephus did is, and this is before the Messiah came, what Josephus did is he killed almost the entire Sanhedrin and replaced them with his people. So that when the Messiah came, the Sanhedrin, who was supposed to represent the Jews, were not Israelites. They were Edomites. Some of them were mixed, because, and we'll read this again, because I'm just getting you high points, but if you read in Genesis, I think 36 and 26, you'll see that Esau married Canaanites. So their lineage was already warped. And Rebecca said she hated his wife. She that's why she wanted to manage Jacob. She said, no, Jacob's not marrying one of them. Send him over here. Because the lineage was messed up. Remember I said it's a seed war. Right. So the Edomites are now in there, right? And so now they're trying to make you think they're Jews, but they're not. Matter of fact, Antigonus, and however you pronounce that guy, he said he was getting on Herod before Herod killed him. and said, "You're just a half Jew anyway. You're not even a real Jew. You're a fake Jew." And then he got killed. So why are we saying this? Because in the last days, Yeshua said there's going to be people that say they're Jews and are not, but they lie. He also said that Jerusalem is going to, in Luke 21, we read where it said that it's going to be inhabited by Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is done. That's what he said. This is what the Bible said, which we believe. So I want to give you a couple of facts. See, here's what happened. We read something, and when I say we, I'm talking, it's the collective. I'm talking about myself as well. Okay, so don't think this is saying, when I say we, that I'm not part of the we. So I looked it up. I said, how many Jews went into exile in Babylon? And you can find it in Jeremiah 52, verse 28 through 30, 2 Kings 24, verse 14 through 16. But the estimates of the Jews, and I don't really like to use that term that much, exiled to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar vary, generally ranging from 10,000 to over 40,000. You know, it was a lot. I know, right? We always think, oh, all the Israelites went into Babylon. No, you know who went into Babylon? The elite. That's who went into Babylon. See, what you want to do, if I'm taking over a country, I cut off the head. I take the head. You read in Daniel chapter, actually we read Daniel chapter 1. He's like, why? What does this have to do with it? It has some stuff to do with it. We're building. Daniel chapter 1. It says, in the third year of the reign, verse 1, of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. And Yahweh gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with part of the vessels of the house of Yah, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. Verse 3. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. See, they're letting you know who was taken into it. It says, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in wisdom and cunning in knowledge and understanding science, such as had ability to stand in the king's palace, and again, the elite, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And again, if you read in those scriptures that I read out to you, you'll see the numbers. You'll see this wasn't the whole, the land would have been empty. They just took the elite, the leadership, governors, satraps, and people like that. And so if you go, so then it's like, then I looked up and said, how many Jews went back into Israel or Judea following the decree of Cyrus the Great in 538 BC? It says it's often cited as 42,360, excluding servants, returned to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. So again, you thought it was going to be this mass exodus, didn't you? At least I did. I'm like, I don't know why. It's just that they were deported into Babylon. I'm thinking they were like Charlie Brown. You know, you see it all group, they all go, and then they come back, or the whole group come back. No, that's not how it worked. So they sent them back, right? Why am I saying that? Because here's what happened. The elites changed them. So normal people, when I say normal, the common person is just, they're just trying to exist. And the rulers know that. They say, they're just trying to exist. If I give them good laws and keep them safe, they'll be obedient. They're not gonna rise up, because if things don't change for them, they're not gonna rise up. The ones who are gonna rise up are the ones who have changed for. See, you're no longer in charge. See, now you wanna rise up, but you would just still living your regular life, you're okay. That's why they do that. So here's what happened. In about 840 AD, the Khazarian kingdom, and this is historical knowledge, but they would try to downplay it. They'll say, oh, it wasn't that many of them. The Khazar, Khazar, they converted to Judaism. And where was the Khazarian kingdom? It was near the Caspian or the Black Sea. And when the Russian hordes came in, they moved into Poland, Germany, Russia, and the places where you find the Ashkenazi. But they converted to Judaism, and there's some evidence that the Edomites were a part of that. Now, let me get back. Why was I reading how many of them went into Babylon and they came out? The elites. So what they'll tell you, they'll say, well, it's only the rulers, the leaders converted to Judaism. In Khazar, the Khazars. It wasn't all of them. It was just the rulers. Well, that's the same thing we find in Babylon. The rulers. But what happens is, Yahweh deals with the rulers, doesn't he? He dealt with Pharaoh. You know what I'm saying? Like, so don't take that. When you'll hear that, you're going to hear this lie, because in the end days there's going to be deception. You're going to hear, oh well, it was only a few of them. No, the Khazars, and here's the thing, there were Jewish writers like Arthur Koestler and Solomon something, I forget the name. They wrote books, and they were like rewarded and saying, oh, you know, they're just, I'm talking about by the Jews. They were like, oh, great history, great books and stuff, because they wrote about the Khazarian kingdom. One's called the 13th tribe and other things, and so but now there's been a switch. Because in the last days, there are going to be people who say they're Jews but lie. I'm not saying every person that's Ashkenazi isn't. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that there's, I would say, because of what I've seen in charts and things. Okay, let me take a step back. So you'll hear things, they'll say, well, we have evidence that our DNA goes back to the Levant. That's what you'll hear, right? Keep this in mind again, that in the last days there are going to be people who say they're Jews but do lie. Do you know that, first of all, it's against the law in Israel for two things. One, it's against the law to disturb a grave, because that's unholy, or whatever their term for it. You can't disturb the graves of Israelites. So how are they comparing Israelite DNA from the Levant that lived there back then with the people from Europe that are Ashkenaz? How are they comparing them with these undisturbed graves? Because here's what they did. They went to the graves of people that were from the land, like in Ashkelon and Megiddo, where there were the Canaanites and the Philistines, and they have some of the same thing. Remember, there's Edom. Edom was a Canaanite because he married Canaanite women. So there is a connection. And in the last days, there's going to be people who say they're Jews, but they lie. So and here's the other thing. It's illegal to get your DNA tested in Israel. Yet these people have their DNA tested. No, I'm joking. Now, it's individual people have, and I've seen them even online. They say, look, I'm Ashkenazi, and look, I'm 99% European and 1% Italian, whatever. They're saying, I have no connection to the Levant. Why? Because, again, there's some things, like for example, say somebody 5 generations ago converted to Judaism in Europe, right? But they converted, so they weren't Israelite or Jewish. So they converted. And now they have kids. This 5 generations later. On top of that, about half the people in Israel aren't serving God. They're atheists or agnostic, etc. So they're not serving God. Half of them. Just say about half. Okay, we'll just say 48%. So in that 48%, so 5 generations ago, we converted. I'm not serving anything now. How am I a Jew? I converted. In other words, I'm not even, you know what I'm saying? My DNA doesn't come from there. Like, again, and I shared this before, I believe every prime minister in Israel has changed their name from a European name to make it sound like it's a name from that area. Jair Netanyahu, his DNA showed up on the internet, which may be why they say it's illegal to get it. But his DNA showed he was from Poland, nowhere else. In other words, like not from the Levant. So that means Netanyahu, his father, whose DNA would have been passed down to him, would not be from there either. So there's going to be, in the last days, there's going to be people who say they're Jews that are not. Listen, you can convert, whatever. But and even that, if you're Judaism and you read in the Bible, let's read this, and then I'm going to be done. Let's turn to John, 1 John chapter 2. Now, I didn't get all this. Some of this, a lot of this I got on my own, but not all of it. Like this I got from somebody else. 1 John chapter 2. So, think about this. Verse 21. He says, I have not written unto you because you know not the truth. And remember, John is an Israelite, right? Okay. And he was the Messiah's, one of his best friends, or closest friends, closest people. He said, I have not written unto you because you know not the truth, but because you know it. And that no lie is of the truth. And this, listen to verse 22. Who is a liar but he that denieth that Yeshua is the Messiah? He is Antichrist that denieth the Father and Son. Whosoever denieth the Son, the same hath not the Father. But he that acknowledgeth the Son hath the Father also. And so the people who serve or observe Judaism, the Talmudic Judaism, believe that the Messiah is in hell burning in excrement. And it looks like in verse 22 and 23, they are denying him, right? Now, let me just, and I'm going to say this, and I think I might be done. But, you know, in Romans chapter 9, it says that, he says, Esau have I hated, Jacob have I loved. Remember, it's a seed war. And then, I'm going to turn to Malachi. I think it's chapter, let's turn to Malachi. Yeah, Malachi chapter 1. And then I'm going to share one other thing with you. Malachi chapter 1. It says the Lord's love for Israel. Verse 1. It says, the burden of the word of the Lord to Israel by Malachi. He says, I have loved you, saith the Lord, yet you say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau, Jacob's brother, saith the Lord? Yet I loved Jacob, and I hated Esau. So you didn't know it was in two different scriptures, did you? He says, and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. Whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord have indignation forever. Now this is my last thing I'm going to read. And this is in the Apocrypha, 2nd Esdras, the book of Esdras, E-S-D-R-A-S. It says, let's see, I have to read, where is it? Where is it? I wrote it down, I even wrote the scripture down. 2nd Esdras, oh, okay. Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that follows. Is that interesting? That's in 2nd Esdras. It's in the Apocrypha, chapter 16, verse 9, or 6, verse 9. Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that follows. That might be why we don't have the Apocrypha in our Bibles anymore, because it talks about things. They said, like in I think it was in Maccabees or Baruch, where it says that they are going to seek to replace the pictures of Israel with themselves. That's what it says. I think it's Baruch or Maccabees. I think it's Baruch chapter 2 or 3, verse 48. They're going to seek to replace the children of Israel with themselves. And in the last days, there's going to be, Yeshua said there's going to be people that say they're Jews, but are not, they do lie. Now, I'm not saying all this to be against anybody. I'm just saying this to be for the word. This is what the word says. So we need to know what the word says. That's really why I'm telling you this. I'm not telling you that, because there's a lot of good people out there and a lot of bad people. And, like how the president said, there's good people on both sides. I can't believe I'm calling Mr. Orange Julius. But there are good people on both sides. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's good people that serve whatever religion they're in. That don't mean they're not good people. And they're people that Yahweh loves. Our job is not to put people in heaven, I mean, not to put people in hell. Our job is to share the love of the Most High with them. So make sure that that's the endearing message that I want to leave you with. Hope you got something out of today.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Brother Tony?
Yes.
Thank you.